Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again and we're going to go back to Sjælland in Denmark, and this time we're visiting a brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So these guys are actually quite an interesting little brewery. They seem to do a lot of interesting stuff that other breweries in Denmark, potentially not many of them, will do. And yeah, the guy who behind the brewery has a very interesting background as well, I have to say. The beer that we're looking at specifically was a recommendation from Jessica at Beer Hive in Amager in southern Copenhagen, so make sure you check out the link to her Instagram page below. And yeah, it's also a style that I've been getting really into again over the last couple of years, and a group of beers that has been gaining popularity as well, actually. So definitely curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. Always nice to introduce new Danish breweries to you on the channel, of course. But yeah, for this review then, we are going to head a little bit to the north of Copenhagen, the Danish capital, to Humlebæk, and we're having a look at my first beer from Kølster. So this particular beer is called Himmelfryd, which in English translates to like Heaven's Delight, something like this. This one comes in at 5% ABV, and this is a Pilsner lager. So yeah, this should be quite interesting. These guys have been around for a good little while, but this was the first time that I ever saw one of their beers. So I thought, well, why not? Let's have a look at this and see what it's all about. And again, thank you to Jessica for the recommendation. Do make sure you check out her little shop. She's got a good selection of stuff there. But yeah, let's crack on and see what this beer has in store for us then. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Kølster. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The channel, of course, has that geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on, you know, your hometown, state, country, whatever you like. You will find things if you search for that. There are the playlists of beers there from different countries. You will find this one in the Danish playlist, which is often being added to. And yeah, the support that you guys give the channel is massively appreciated. So keep it coming, keep your beer suggestions coming, and we'll keep going, of course. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then to chat a little bit about Kølster Brewing. So, Kølster, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Humlebæk to the north of Copenhagen, and this company was founded back in 2011. So, the main man behind the company is Per Kølster, who, of course, it takes its name from, but he has a major background in agriculture. So, he was a researcher and teacher at Copenhagen University, but more recently he was involved with the company Aroma, which focuses on organic farming, and they also had like a kind of food box ordering scheme from what I understand as well. But he's also been the chairman of several prominent organisations in Denmark, including the Danish National Ecological Association and also the Kongernes Nordsjælland National Park. Just to give you a couple of examples, there are more things that he's been part of than that, but yeah, these are the ones that I could find information on. But the brewery itself can be found on the Krogerup estate, and they brew their beers using malts that are produced in their own maltery from grains that are grown on the farm. Their maltery apparently has the capacity to produce around 3 to 4 tons of malt per month, and they also grow their own hops as well, which are clones of old Danish varieties that have never been released previously, and these are of course only done on a very small scale, so they're only used in some of the beers. But the focus of the brewery is to, you know, be completely organic and vegan friendly, and the brewery is based in the estate's old dairy. As of October 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 180 different kinds of beers, and if you go through the Untappd page, they've got a whole host of different styles in there. There was Gozes, there was hazy IPAs, there was like West Coasters and some dark beers and things like that. They have done quite a lot actually, but it just amazes me that I had never heard of this company actually, having been in, you know, in South Sweden and having been so interested in the Danish beer scene for about 7 years. Somehow this is a brewery that had kind of just slipped through the net actually. So yeah, that is quite interesting, as I say, to find a brewery who are producing their own malts and their own hops actually over in Denmark. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you. about Kølster for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. I'll also see if there's a website for the Krogerup estate as well, and we'll put that in there too. So yeah, you can go and have a little look at these things for yourself and see if you can get a hold of some of their beers. But yeah, let's crack on then and have a wee look at it. If you want to learn more, as I say, check out the websites. You can follow them on their social media, and if you want to learn more about the beers, I'd recommend you check out the Untappd page. And we'll also put a link down there to my future reviews that we'll do from Kølster, because we will need to have a look at a few more of the beers from these guys. But yeah, I'll just like have a wee look at the artwork on this before we open it up. As you can see, quite interesting there, you can see the Kølster symbol. It's quite simple, but you know, it really does work. There you can see the European Union's organic certification on the back there. And yeah, it's also, you can see the Danish crown as well. So it's also certified as organic by the Danish government too. Plain silver top in the can here, 440 millilitres. I actually can't remember what I paid for this can. I would guess it would be somewhere in the region of 30 Danish kroner. So that is going to be about, what, 40 Swedish? Maybe a little bit more, maybe about 40. Yeah, you add on about a third, 40 Swedish kroner. So it's going to be in the region of €4 for the can, £3.50 sterling, I guess, about $4.50 American, you know, something like that. It says on the side here, this is a fresh, organic, dry hopped Pilsner brewed with clean Pilsner malt from our own production. It's dry hopped with German Sapphire and Pearl. So we know these hops quite well. Sapphire, if I remember rightly, is sort of about 3.5% alpha acid. It'll give you a little bit of a slightly orange flavour, but it's got all the typical German noble qualities. Pearl is one of the slightly higher alpha acid German noble hops, and if it's either 5.5 or 6.5% alpha acid, it's going to give you. So this one should have a good little bit of floral character to it actually. But yeah, as we said, a 5% German style Pilsner, this one, with some of Kølster's own Pilsner malt. So yeah, let's crack this beer open and see what we have. Oh, it's got a little bit excited there, but it is not bad. So yeah, could feel the can was a wee bit hard with this one actually, but there we go. We'll just be careful with this as we pour it, because it did seem a little bit excited. But there we are. This should be pretty cool actually. I've not had too many Danish brewed Pilsners, but yeah, it is a style, as I say, that I very much enjoy. So, remember, of course, the Pilsner was a style invented in the city of Pilsen, which was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, basically lived in by, you know, ethnic Germans and ethnic Czechs. Pilsner Urquell was developed back in the 1800s, I forget, was it 1842, I want to say, in 1840, by a German brewmaster, a Bavarian brewmaster who moved to the city. He was only there for a few years because apparently he wasn't a very nice man, but that is the origin of the Pilsner. And remember, these beers are of course lager beers. The difference between a lager and an ale is for the most part the type of yeast you use and the fermentation temperature. Lagers ferment at lower temperatures, 8 to 12 degrees, and they use bottom fermenting yeasts. Ales, of course, ferment at higher temperatures, 15 to 18-ish degrees, depends on the style and things like that. And of course, these temperatures can vary depending on what style of beer you're doing. But yeah, ales use top fermenting yeasts and ferment like 15 to 18 degrees. So, yeah, this one does look pretty damn good, I have to say. You can see that when we poured the beer, it had about, a 3/4 finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. That has faded away to be a kind of thinner layer now, but you can see we've got some nice kind of medium size bubbles to this one. Colour wise, this beer is pretty much what you'd expect. It's got a lovely kind of natural, unfiltered type quality to it, this one. So yeah, it looks absolutely great. In terms of colour, definitely kind of pale straw yellow type colour. This is what you would expect of the style. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel age you do or any adjuncts you put in can affect the colour of the beer too. When it comes to Pilsners though, you don't really have to care about that, to be honest with you. But yeah, this beer looks very, very nice. As I say, it's pretty sure this is unfiltered. 1 or 2 big bubbles on the bottom of the side of the glass, and a few little ones going up toward the top of that head there. But overall, this does look very, very nice. Yeah, nothing untoward about this beer when you consider what style it is. Let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see what we have. Yeah, aroma wise, this is pretty nice actually. It actually smells like quite a dry Pilsner, and you know, you can smell sapphire. It's just very distinctive when you use it in Pilsners. It just gives you this really deep floral type thing. Um, so yeah, aroma wise, this one is pretty damn nice, I have to say. Yeah, I do like how that goes together. Yeah, in terms of the in terms of the overall picture of this one, it's actually quite a wet Pilsner. It's got a nice little bit of bitterness there, and it is a wee bit more bready as well, but I wonder if that's maybe because it's unfiltered. Of course, the main difference, you do get even sub-styles of Pilsner. You get the Czech Pilsen and the German Pilsner. So for me, generally speaking, the German ones are very clean and kind of crisp and quite dry, whereas the Czech ones tend to be a little bit more yeasty and bready and things like this, but still give you the kind of hoppy bitterness, if you like. There's, of course, saying this one is a German Pilsner because it's using the German hops, I guess, rather than the Czech Sats. And of course, you can use the Slovenian Styrian Goldings and stuff like this in them, and Dana and stuff too. But yeah, this one is very, very nice. It smells like a nice kind of craft Pilsner. There's been a lot of Pilsners I've had recently, a lot of lager beers that I've had this from craft breweries that have had a similar aroma to this one. But yeah, let's break it down and describe it a wee bit more in depth. So the backbone of the beer, absolutely, you have a nice little bit of that fresh white bread crust. On top of that, there's a little bit. On top of that, there's a little bit of you do get a little bit of a more dense white bready character. Um, yeah, a little bit of the more kind of bread crust character. Then you get the more dense white bread. There's also, you know, this one isn't too dry, but at the back of the nose, you do get a little bit of that kind of crispness that you would expect of Pilsner malt. But the interesting thing, of course, it's their own Pilsner malt, so it's going to be quite unique. So this Pilsner malt has a little bit of dryness in the top of the nose, but certainly it's not as dry in the nose as other Pilsners that I've come across. This one's actually quite wet in a lot of ways. So yeah, white bread crust, smooth, thicker white bread, and then you also have that nice. You've also got a little bit of a kind of wetter white bread at the same time. There's also a wee touch of sweetness to this. There is a wee touch of sweetness to this beer, which I do, um, which I do quite enjoy. So, aroma wise, in that sense, it is pretty damn nice. Um, yeah, the malty side of this beer is quite interesting. It really is just it's really kind of wet, and it smells like a sort of really kind of wet, soaked white bread in a way, this one. And as I say, you do get a little bit of that Pilsner malt dryness in there. There's a little touch of like a biscuity type thing. And there is a kind of, the more that you smell of this beer, you start to get a wee bit of that crackery note. You start to get a little bit of a Jacob's cream cracker type quality out of this one. So yeah, the way this beer goes about its business that way is really quite nice actually. Yeah, aroma wise, I like it, so it gets a thumbs up from me. Um, yeah, yeah, I do like how this beer goes together that way. Um, yeah, so it's the malty side of this one is quite interesting. I'm just curious to see what it's going to taste like actually. Hoppy side of things is more familiar, of course, um, because we know these hops quite well. In the back of the nose, you're getting just a little teeny bit of earthiness, but this beer really has quite a deep floral aromatic quality to it. And of course, these German hops are fairly low in alpha acid compared to what you're going to get in America, Australia, New Zealand, even Slovenia these days. And you do actually have higher alpha acid German hops, you know, Mandarin Bavaria, Hallertau Blanc. There are a few others that have been developed too. But yeah, the floral notes in this beer are really quite deep and quite interesting for sure. Um, the grassiness in this beer. You do get a nice kind of sort of fresh grassiness in there. You do get a nice little bit of fresh grassiness in there as well at the front of the nose. But yeah, for me, the green component, it's the sapphire that kind of dominates that and gives you that depth to the beer, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, you do get a nice deep green component there, a bit of earthiness, good bit of floral character, and also a wee bit of a kind of zesty grassiness. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together too is really quite nice. On the fruity side of things, you do get a little bit of the kind of orangey character that sapphire is going to give you. You do get a little bit of that at the front of the nose, but behind that, yeah, behind that you do have behind that you do actually have a nice little bit of other kind of fruity character as well. There's a bit of the oily pear that you would kind of expect from this style. There's a wee bit of the kind of sultana note, but yeah, for me, sapphire's giving it this really wet orange component. So yeah, a bit of oily pear. There's a little touch of fresh green apple in there, and a wee bit of that kind of sultana type note, the dry white green grapes. But the more that I smell this beer, the more of a kind of orangey character I get out of this. So yeah, that's definitely quite interesting when it comes to this beer. Yeah, so as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of these things before you get stuck into them. But I think it's about time that we taste this beer now. So yeah, this one is the Himmelfryd, Heaven's Delight, if you like, a 5% Pilsner beer with Kølster's own Pilsner malt from Humlebæk, just to the north of Copenhagen. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. Ooh, that's nice. I like this beer, I will say that straight away. This is really nice. First impression is, I'm just thinking if I was to taste this blind, I'm not sure I would pick out that it was a Pilsner right enough. But, you know, it quite obviously is a lager. I'd probably be more inclined to say it was some kind of Helles lager or something like that, but I like this. You know, if I was tasting it blind, I might guess that it was maybe, you know, a little bit of a Kellerpils or something like that. Yeah, it's interesting, this beer. It's one of the wetter Pilsners I've come across. It's very smooth, so you can kind of, you know, I think I'd like to think if I was tasting it blind, I would be able to get from the flavour that it's unfiltered. But yeah, the way that this goes together is really, really nice. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together is good. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. I'd love to try this on tap actually and see how it differs, but anyway, that's another thing. So yeah, for me, where do we start with this then? We'll go through it, the beer, as we always do, but for me this is quite a wet, smooth beer, this one. It doesn't, as I say, it's not the driest of Pilsners, and it's not the hoppiest of Pilsners, but it's you know, if you just view it as a kind of lager beer and for its drinkability and stuff, I really like this. I think this is very good. Yeah, so middle third of your palate then. This beer is quite similar to what I was picking up in the aroma. The flavour comes out kind of what I would expect based on the aroma. So yeah, you've got a nice little bit of bread crusty type quality. So yeah, backbone of the beer, you've got a really nice little bit of fresh white bread crust in there, absolutely. On top of that, you've got a more dense, you do have a more dense white bready type character to the beer, absolutely. And then within, kind of actually, to be honest, between the bread crust and the more dense white bread, there's almost a layer, like a layer of kind of Jacob's cream cracker. I would say that, actually. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, there is sort of a layer of Jacob's cream cracker in this beer. And it does, that dryness comes out a wee bit further into the aftertaste too. Perhaps toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you do get a very slight woodiness to the beer as well, which is quite interesting. But yeah, on top of that kind of crackery layer, you do have a little bit of a more dense white bread. So you've got a little bit of a more kind of dense white bread with this one, and then yeah, a bit more of a dense white bread on top of that, and then you have a little bit of then you start to get the kind of Pilsner malt elements at the back of that front third of your of the middle third of your palate. So if you go further back there, you do get a little bit of the dryness of the Pilsner malt, but as you move further forward from that, you've kind of got a circle sitting in the middle of your palate. So you've got a light layer of you have a light layer of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing in there as well. So yeah, you've got that nice kind of light layer of biscuity quality in there. On top of that, you do get, when you go into the dead centre of your palate, the beer actually gets just that little bit more oily, and it's kind of like the oily stuff that holds together the McVitie's digestive biscuit. I hesitate to say like straight up caramel, but yeah, it's more like an oily kind of slightly syrupy biscuity type thing there. So yeah, dead centre of palate, you've got that oily syrupy biscuity type thing, and as you move further out toward the edge of that kind of sweeter circle that I was talking about, you get the more kind of crisp McVitie's digestive biscuity type characters coming out of the beer. So again, I like that. I do like how that goes together. So yeah, that's pretty nice. So yeah, middle, it's quite, as I say, it's quite a wet Pilsner, this one, and it does give you that kind of unfiltered note. It's kind of, even though it uses the German hops, I would say that the kind of malt base and things, and the way this goes together is a little bit more like is a little bit more like a kind of Czech Pilsner, to be honest with you. And the beer, in some sense, the overall vibe of this beer, it's actually like a kind of farmhouse lager in some ways. It really has just a little bit of this kind of farmhouse, almost very slightly saison-y type character, which is kind of interesting as well when you consider that this is like an estate brewery. So it's definitely got a little bit of that rawness and kind of it's got a little bit of that rawness and yeastiness that you would expect of a sort of farmhouse beer. So I like that about this too. It's different in that sense. On the back third of the palate, and I think we can go to that now, the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a sort of bready build-up in this one. So yeah, a little bit of bready build-up there. The base on that back third, on the back third of your palate, would be, you do get, the base on the back third of your palate, you get a little bit of that kind of bread crusty type thing. On top of that, there's a wee bit more of a, you do have a wee bit more kind of white bready character as well. So you can feel the white bready character is a little bit taller and a little bit more airy, but at the same time it's still quite dense, and it's actually quite a sweet white bread too. And then on top of that, you have a little bit of you have a little bit more kind of as you say, there's a little bit of a more kind of yeasty character just sitting on top of that, and it is, you know, it's like a kind of dry, woody, crackery sort of bready character. So you'll feel that on top of the more dense white bread layer on the back third of your palate there. But absolutely, as always, the back third of the palate, the flavour is taller as you come forward, and then it squashes together as you reach the middle third of the palate. On the hoppy side of things then, let's move on to that. Back corners of the palate, you do have a little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it gets a little bit herbal, and as you reach the front kind of corners of the palate, it's definitely got a little bit of that more, this beer definitely has a wee bit of a more kind of hoppy, it's definitely got that kind of deeper green type quality to it, which I quite enjoy. So yeah, it definitely has a little bit of that more kind of deep, green type vibe to it. So yeah, I do quite like that. Yeah, nice kind of deep floral, great green quality to it. And yeah, as I say, Sapphire just gives you that depth to the green component. But round the front curve of the palate, the beer is lighter and grassier, so there's a wee bit of zestiness in there. But I find that overall, the green component in this beer is really quite wet. It's a very wet feeling Pilsner, this one for sure. Let's look at the front third of the palate then. So the border region between front and middle third of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of a kind of white, little bit of white bready build up there. The base of the front third of your palate is a little bit more, as I say, it's like white bread again, and you also have just a little bit of the fruity character on top of that. So yeah, smooth white bread and a wee bit of that bready build up there, but on top of that, yeah, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And the way that goes together is really nice as well. So let's focus on that then. At the back of that front third of your palate, you know, you get a little bit of that kind of sultana, dried white green grapey note. As you move further forward, you start to get a little bit of an oily pear, and there's a wee touch of gooseberry to this beer as well. But yeah, as you reach the kind of front half of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of the kind of oily, you do get a little bit of that kind of oily orange type character as well. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that sense, I think, is really nice. You get a nice oily fruity character to this one, and that sort of is in keeping with the really wet mouthfeel that this beer has. So yeah, this is, I like beers like this that will change your that test your palate a little bit. And I'm wondering, because this is obviously an organic Pilsner, I've always found that, organic malt has this sort of wet, bready character to it. Even when I tried my first organic beers from the Kølster, what was it called? Klosterbrauerei in Heidelberg when I was in Germany. They had that kind of character to them as well, which I thought was really interesting. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together in that sense, I think, is really nice. I do enjoy the way that this beer goes about its business from that perspective. Yeah, interesting. Definitely interesting for sure. On the mouthfeel then, I think we can round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. As I said, this beer, the overall vibe that you get from this beer is that it's really wet. This is a nice kind of wet lager beer, this one. So I would say that this beer, it is kind of light bodied. Carbonation is very smooth. It's got quite a wet and slightly oily mouthfeel to it. In terms of IBUs, this beer really doesn't have that much IBU to it. I would say maybe about 20 IBUs if you're lucky. The malt base, as we said, it's very kind of dense, has a good bit of smoothness to it, but it's also got a little touch of sweetness in there too, which I do quite enjoy. And then obviously on top of that, we have you have that little bit of on top of that, yeah, you've got the wee bit of sweetness in there, but on the fruity side of things, it's kind of, again, wet and oily. But yeah, I really like how this beer goes together. It's definitely an interesting Pilsner beer, this one. I don't think I'd get that this was a Pilsner if I tasted it blindly, to be honest with you. I would know it was a lager. I'm pretty sure I would know it was a lager. I'd probably think it was some kind of Helles or whatever. But, it's not quite as dry and as bitter as Pilsners that I've come across in the past. But regardless of what it is, I like it, and that should be the main question. Did you enjoy the beer? Yes, absolutely, this one. But it maybe needs to be just a little bit kind of more bitter for me to fit into the Pilsner category in a way. So maybe just a little bit more early edition hopping with this one would be a good idea. But as I said, this beer for me was really, really nicely done, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink it again. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, certainly Really, certainly really nice, this one. It does, in fairness, it does give you a wee bit of bitterness early on, but I find it quite smooth after that. But yeah, an awesome beer, this one, and I certainly, as I say, would not hesitate to drink this again. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So this was the Himmelfryd, Himmelfryd, to give it the Danish pronunciation, a Pilsner beer, 5% ABV from Kølster in Humlebæk to the north of Copenhagen. I need to check out a few more of their beers for sure. But once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Kølster as well, and we will return to these guys very soon, I'm sure. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out theirs, check out Jessica's shop, Beer Hive Amar, and we will be back very soon. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.